In 1297, England marched north with 9,000 men and the confidence of an empire. Scotland had fewer soldiers, less armor, less money, and one narrow wooden bridge. Stirling Bridge didn't connect two banks that day. It separated an army into pieces. And the English didn't realize they were doomed until the line stopped moving, until the crossing became a bottleneck and retreat became impossible. Mist presses low over the karst like wet wool, swallowing the fields and muffling sound. The River Forth moves slow and brown through marsh and reed, quiet, almost unimpressive, but it controls movement. North of it is a road into Scotland's heartland. South of it is England's occupation machine. And between them, the only safe crossing. Stirling Bridge, narrow timber planks, slick in damp air, barely wide enough for 2 men abreast. On the south bank, the English host gathers. Cavalry and plate longbowmen, disciplined infantry, organized, supplied, confident. On the north bank, the Scots look rougher. Uneven gear, weathered faces, hands that look like they've held shovels more than swords. This isn't a romantic duel story. This is geometry and timing. Because the bridge is so narrow, it forces an entire army to cross in a thin stream, 2 men at a time. And numbers don't help if they can't arrive together. Scotland doesn't break in one dramatic moment. It breaks the way bones break under constant pressure. 2 years earlier, England's King Edward I, called the Hammer of the Scots, had invaded to settle a succession crisis after Scotland's king died without a clear heir. Edward didn't come to negotiate. He came to absorb Scotland the way he'd already absorbed Wales. By 1297, English garrisons controlled most Scottish castles. English judges delivered verdicts in Scottish courts. English soldiers took food for supply, seized horses for transport, and turned the law into a weapon. For ordinary people, conquest isn't speeches. It's practical pain. Your grain feeding someone else's army, your son conscripted to fight your neighbor, justice delivered in a foreign tongue, enforced at sore point. Every humiliation teaches the same lesson. Scotland exists at someone else's permission. Rebellion doesn't ignite from one grand declaration. It spreads like infection, raids, ambushes, small killings that turn into bigger ones. Rumor travels faster than armies. And by late summer 1297, 2 names begin to William Wallace wasn't a lord or a trained general. He was a minor landowner turned outlaw, wanted for killing an English sheriff in a brawl that spiraled into bloodshed. He had no formal army, no treasury, no claim to nobility, but he had something Edward's commanders didn't. He knew Scotland's terrain like a poacher knows the woods, and he understood that meeting England in open battle was suicide. So he made sure the battle would never be open. His co-commander was Andrew Moray, a nobleman's son who'd already liberated the North through months of brutal guerrilla warfare, ambushes, supply raids, psychological pressure. Together, they commanded men who'd lose in a fair fight. So they made sure the fight wouldn't be fair. By late August, English control begins to seize. Roads aren't safe. Castles feel exposed. Garrisons send nervous reports south. And an empire can absorb defeat, but it can't tolerate uncertainty. So England sends a response north, an army large enough to crush rebellion in a single stroke. And that army arrives at Stirling in early September. Stirling is the gate. The castle watches the crossing. The Forth is wide and ugly here, with mudflats that punish movement and currents that drown armored men. If England crosses this river today, the rebellion gets crushed. The bridge becomes everything. It's not a massive stone span. It's a narrow wooden crossing, slick timber planks forcing men into a tight flow, 2 abreast at most. It would take hours for a whole army to pass. England's commanders are John de Warenne, Earl of Surrey, aging, experienced, impatient, and Hugh de Cressingham, the king's treasurer in Scotland. Cressingham is arrogant, cost-obsessed, and eager to finish this so he can return to collecting taxes. Now comes the human moment, the choice that makes this day unforgettable. A Scottish knight fighting for the English, Sir Richard Lundy, warns them, don't use the bridge. He offers a smarter plan. Ride upstream to a shallow ford where cavalry can cross in bulk, flank the Scots, and hit them from the side or rear. It's a real option, a clean workaround, the kind of maneuver that wins campaigns. But Cressingham dismisses it.
Silence! We cross the bridge directly, as ordered.
He wants speed. He wants the direct route. He persuades Surrey to reject Lundy's plan and march straight over the bridge, because delay costs money, and Cressingham answers to a king who expects results. That decision is the hinge, because Wallace and Moray don't need to outfight England in open ground. They only need to let England drip-feed its army into a place where cavalry can't deploy, where mud slows movement, and where retreat turns into crushing panic. The Scots do the hardest thing in war. They wait. Morning fog clings to the fourth. English boots hit damn planks. Confident, routine. The bridge does what it was built to do. It carries men across. But it forces them into a fatal shape. 2 men wide, hundreds stretching behind. No room to deploy, no fast retreat. On the north bank, the first English detachments try to form up on ground that isn't fully dry. They glance back for comfort, expecting the mass of their army behind them. What they see is a line, vulnerable, stretched, slow, and this is where the Scots are counting. They're watching the bridge like a clock, counting banners, counting horse groups, measuring how long it takes a rank to clear the planks. They're measuring the flow. Too early, the English can pull back. Too late, the English establish a real foothold. So the Scots wait until the number on the far side feels killable, until the trap can close and the bridge becomes a noose. The Scots counter what feels like half the English vanguard on the north bank, maybe 2,000 men, maybe less. Enough to be dangerous, not enough to win. And when the proportions feel right, the Scots move. The Scottish line surges forward, tight, disciplined, spear points leveled like a wall of iron. The first impact isn't a duel. It's bodies colliding, spears punching into gaps, the press making individual skill almost irrelevant. The English on the north bank are caught mid-setup. Their formation is incomplete. Their rear is clogged by more troops still stepping off the bridge, men who don't know the killing has started. Now the river becomes a wall behind them. Panic doesn't arrive as one scream. It arrives as a realization. There is no space to fix this. To retreat means moving backward into men still arriving. That means jamming the bridge. That means turning a crossing into a crush. A man goes down on the planks. Blood makes timber slick. A second man trips. Then a third. An English archer glances back, expecting the comfort of mass ranks. He sees a packed stream of helmets in fear. Men shoved forward by pressure they can't control, unable to see what ahead, unable to stop. Ahead, Scottish spears. Behind, a bridge already too full. The Scots don't need to kill every Englishman on earth. They only need to keep the north bank sealed and let the bridge continue feeding the trap. Once the first English ranks begin to fold, battle turns into disaster. Concrete facts take over. The ground is soft, boots sink. Movement slows to stumble. Horses can't deploy into a clean charge because there's no room. They're hemmed in by their own infantry, thrashing in confusion. Armor helps until you fall. Then it drags you down into mud that swallows men whole. Men on the bridge hear the noise ahead turn ugly, screaming. The wet crunch of impact. The animal sound of mass panic. Movement slows, stalls. Those still on the south and can't see the slaughter, only that the line has stopped. Pressure builds. Men keep stepping forward because the men behind them force it. Some try to turn around. On a bridge this narrow, turning is hard. Passing is impossible. It becomes a jam of bodies and weapons and gear and terror. And then the crossing stops being a crossing. Whether the bridge collapsed under the weight or was cut down deliberately in the chaos, the result was the same. The crossing stopped functioning and became a dead end. Men fall into the fourth. The current isn't fast, but it doesn't need to be. Armor pulls them down like anchors. The river doesn't care if you're a knight or a foot soldier. It swallows all of it. And here's the twist in plain language. England still has thousands of men on the south bank, rested, armed, ready. But that strength can't be used, because an army's real power isn't what it has on paper. It's what it can bring to the fight at one time. At Stirling, England's overwhelming force becomes whatever the bridge can deliver, a few hundred at a time, and those few hundred are cut down before the next wave can matter. When the killing slows, it doesn't end with ceremony. It ends because there are fewer men left to kill. The north bank is churned mud, broken gear, bodies in heaps where panic forced them together. The air tastes metallic. The river carries pieces downstream. Cloth, splinters, shields, the quiet evidence of men who believed numbers alone were enough. Hugh de Cressingham, the treasurer who'd ignored the warning, who'd pushed the direct crossing, died on that north bank. Later, Scots would flay strips of his skin as souvenirs. Empire had a price. Arrogance doubled it. On the south bank, Surrey still has a large force intact, but the point of Stirling is a crossing, and the crossing has become a death machine. So Surrey withdraws. The bridge is destroyed. The army retreats toward Berwick, abandoning garrisons, leaving castles exposed. Scotland doesn't win the war that day, but it wins something more dangerous, proof that England can bleed. Victory opens a door, not to peace, but to momentum. Garrisons hesitate. Local collaborators recalculate. Scotland breeds again through smoke and blood. But there's a cost. Andrew Moray's wounds don't heal. He dies weeks later, leaving Wallace to carry the weight alone. And the moment Edward I hears about Stirling, the hammer of the Scots, the man who conquered Wales, the king who does not lose, he hears it like a personal insult. He comes north with fury, heavy cavalry, and a plan to erase Stirling's lesson at a place called Falkirk, where Wallace's spear formations, the Shiltrins, would face their ultimate test, where mud wouldn't save them, where the bottleneck would be gone.